"Please stop doing that forbidden thing," she cried, but the rancher didn't, and the town went mad. The morning sun rose slowly over the small town of Willow Creek. The light touched the rooftops and the fields beyond, spreading warmth across the quiet streets. It was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone else, where the baker greeted the children walking to school, and the mailman always had a cheerful word for the farmers. Life was simple, calm, and predictable. People worked hard, helped each other, and followed the traditions that had been passed down for generations. It was a place where nothing unusual happened until the rancher arrived. The rancher was a man who lived on the edge of town, far from the other houses, in a modest but sturdy ranch that had been in his family for years. His name was Caleb Thompson, a tall man with broad shoulders and weathered skin from years of working under the sun. His dark hair was often covered by a wide-brimmed hat, and his hands were rough from handling horses, ropes, and farm tools. Caleb was known for his independence. He did things his own way and rarely asked anyone for advice. The townspeople respected his strength and skill, but they also found him a little frightening. Caleb didn't mind what people thought. He lived by his own rules, and that was enough for him. Every morning, Caleb would rise before the sun, tend to his animals, and check the fences that surrounded his property. He liked the solitude, the quiet sounds of nature, and the sense of control he had over his land. But over time, people in the town began to notice something unusual. Caleb had started doing something on his property that no one had seen before. It was strange and unusual, something that had never been done in Willow Creek. Rumors began to spread quietly from one neighbor to another, and some people whispered their worries when they thought no one could hear. But no one dared confront him directly. Not yet. Among the townspeople, there was a woman named Emma Riley. Emma was the local school teacher, known for her kind heart and her love for the children she taught. She was gentle but strong in her own way, always trying to do what was right and fair. Emma had lived in Willow Creek all her life. She loved the town and its people, and she believed in the importance of rules and traditions. When she first noticed Caleb's unusual activity, she felt uneasy. There was something about it that didn't sit right with her, and she worried that it could bring harm to the town or to the people she cared about. One morning, as the schoolchildren filed into their classroom, Emma looked out the window toward Caleb's ranch. She could see him working near the edge of his property, moving strange equipment and digging into the earth in a way that seemed reckless. The children were excited to see the activity, pointing and whispering to each other. But Emma felt a knot in her stomach. She knew she had to do something before the situation got worse. She could not ignore it, not when the safety of the town might be at risk. After school, Emma walked toward Caleb's ranch. The dirt road crunched beneath her shoes as she approached the edge of his property. Her heart beat faster with every step. She had never spoken to Caleb about anything serious before. He was a private man and most people left him alone. But today felt different. She could not stand by silently while danger grew. She called out softly, "Mr. Thompson." Caleb turned slowly, his hat shading his eyes, and gave her a nod. His expression was calm, unreadable. "Good afternoon, Miss Riley," he said in a deep voice. "Is there something I can help you with?" He turned back to his work as if her words were wind blowing around him without touching. Emma watched him for a moment, hoping he would at least look concerned. But he did not. That was Caleb, always calm, always in control, always doing what he believed was right. Emma felt a mix of frustration and fear. She wanted to argue, to explain why this was dangerous, but she knew that Caleb would not respond to reasoning in the usual way. He was stubborn, and stubbornness could sometimes be as dangerous as the activity itself. She tried once more, her voice gentle but firm. "Caleb, please, I'm asking you as someone who cares about this town. What you're doing, it could hurt people. It could hurt you too. Please stop." As she walked back to the town, Emma's mind was full of questions. Why was Caleb doing this? What could be so important that he would risk everything? And more importantly, what could she do to stop it before something bad happened? She knew that speaking to him alone might not be enough. The town needed to be aware, but she also feared how people would react. Caleb was respected and feared. No one had ever openly challenged him before. That evening, the streets of Willow Creek were quiet, but whispers had begun to spread. People noticed Emma's concern and began asking questions. Rumors grew faster than she could have imagined. Some townspeople were curious, wondering what Caleb was up to. Others were worried, sensing danger in his unusual behavior. A few admired him even more, thinking that perhaps he was simply brave and independent. The balance of the town's calm life began to shift, almost imperceptibly, like a ripple in a still pond. Emma spent the night thinking about Caleb. She could not sleep, imagining all the possible consequences of his actions. She thought of the children she taught, the families she cared about, and the trust the town had placed in its rules and traditions. Caleb's stubbornness, while admirable in some ways, was frightening in others. She knew that this was only the beginning, and that the coming days would test everyone's courage, patience, and sense of responsibility. Meanwhile, Caleb worked late into the evening. The fading sunlight cast long shadows across the land, and the air grew colder as the night approached. He moved carefully but deliberately, fully absorbed in his task. For him, it was not about defiance or stubbornness. It was about something deeper, something personal that no one else could understand. He believed in his choices, even if others did not. And in that quiet, his determination burned brighter than the fading sun. By the next morning, the town had begun to notice the changes. People were talking in hushed voices at the general store, at the post office, and outside the school. Some were scared, some were angry, and some were simply curious. But one thing was certain. Caleb's actions had caught their attention, and Willow Creek would never be the same while he continued. Emma, too, felt the weight of responsibility pressing on her shoulders. She could not ignore what was happening. She had tried to reason with Caleb, but it had not worked. Now, she would need to find another way to protect the town she loved. She did not know what that way would be, but she was determined to try. Even if it meant standing up to the most stubborn man she had ever met, she would do it. The rancher did not know it yet, but his life and the life of the town were about to change. What had started as simple curiosity, or perhaps a personal choice, would soon grow into a challenge that no one could ignore. And at the heart of it all stood Emma, the woman who cared too much to remain silent, and Caleb, the man who cared only for what he believed was right. Their paths were set on a collision course, and the peaceful town of Willow Creek was about to be tested in ways it had never imagined. The days passed, and Caleb continued his unusual work on the ranch. Early in the morning, before the sun had fully risen, he was already outside, moving and arranging materials, digging and repairing things in ways that nobody in Willow Creek had ever seen before. The townspeople watched from a distance, their curiosity growing with each passing day. Some whispered quietly among themselves, others shook their heads, and a few shook with worry. It seemed that no one could understand what Caleb was doing, and that made the whole town feel uneasy. Emma, meanwhile, could not stop thinking about it. Every day she walked by the ranch, watching him silently from the road or the edges of her garden. She would sometimes catch him looking back at her, his eyes calm, steady, and unshaken. She knew that she could not ignore what was happening. Caleb was strong, determined, and independent, but she also knew that his stubbornness could cause trouble for the town if left unchecked. Her heart ached at the thought of possible accidents or harm, especially to the children she cared for. She decided she could not act alone. One afternoon, she went to the small town hall and spoke quietly with Mr. Henderson, an older man who had lived in Willow Creek for over 50 years and knew the town's history better than anyone. "Mr. Henderson," she said, her voice filled with concern, "Caleb is doing something unusual on his land. I don't know exactly what it is, but I fear it could hurt someone. Please, can you help me? Can we do something to stop him before it's too late?" Henderson frowned, stroking his white beard. "Emma, you know Caleb. He doesn't answer to anyone. He's stubborn as a mule and he has always done things his own way. But if what you say is true, we cannot just ignore it. Perhaps we need to watch, gather information, and find a safe way to talk to him. We can't confront him angrily. He will never listen that way. I tried speaking to him, but he wouldn't stop. He said he had his reasons and that I shouldn't worry, but I do worry. I can't let him endanger the town. Please, we must find a way. Sometimes he would pause and look at the horizon, thinking deeply. For him, the work was personal, important, and necessary. He believed that what he was doing could make a difference, though no one else could see it yet. Meanwhile, the town began to feel the tension growing. People talked quietly in shops, outside the school, and along the streets. They noticed the changes Caleb's work was causing on his land. The fences looked different, the ground looked disturbed, and new structures began appearing that no one could explain. Some were curious, some were afraid, and some were angry. One day, a group of farmers gathered near the edge of Caleb's property. "Have you seen what he's doing?" one asked, pointing to the new wooden posts Caleb had installed. "I've never seen anything like it. It looks dangerous. What if it collapses or starts a fire?" "Maybe this is just another one of his ideas. Let's hope it doesn't hurt anyone." Over the next few days, Emma began to quietly gather information. She spoke to neighbors who lived close to Caleb's property, asking them what they had seen. Some had noticed strange noises at night. Others saw Caleb moving objects that looked heavy and unusual. One man mentioned seeing a small fire that Caleb had started to burn something, but he was careful to keep it controlled. Everyone agreed that Caleb was careful, but no one could understand what he was doing. Emma wrote down every detail she learned. She hoped that if she could gather enough information, she could convince Caleb to stop. But deep down, she worried that even that might not be enough. Caleb was determined, and determination could be stronger than reason. One afternoon, Emma saw Caleb working near the edge of a steep hill on his property. The sun was bright and dust rose around him as he moved. She noticed him carrying something large and heavy, and she felt a shiver of fear. "That looks dangerous," she whispered to herself. She wanted to shout, to run to him and tell him to stop, but she knew it would do no good. Caleb would not respond to panic. Instead, she walked back to the town to speak with Mr. Henderson and a few other trusted neighbors. "We need to do something before it's too late," she said. "If he keeps going like this, someone could get hurt. Maybe it's time we speak to the town council and see if we can find a safe way to intervene." Caleb, for his part, seemed unaware of the growing concern. He continued his work with focus and care, following his own plan without distraction. He believed in what he was doing, and he believed that the town would not understand until it was too late. He had a vision that he was determined to follow, even if it meant standing alone. One evening, as the sun began to set, Emma stood near the edge of town, watching Caleb work. The sky was painted with shades of orange and pink, and the wind carried the scent of grass and soil. She felt a mix of admiration and worry. Caleb was strong and capable, but his stubbornness worried her. She knew she could not force him to stop, but she could continue trying to warn him and protect the town. That night, Emma stayed awake for a long time, thinking about what might happen. She imagined the worst scenarios and the possible consequences. She worried about accidents, injuries, and the anger that might rise in the town if something went wrong. She also thought about Caleb and why he was so determined. What could be so important that he would risk everything? She did not know the answer, but she hoped she could find a way to understand him before it was too late. Meanwhile, Caleb worked under the moonlight, moving carefully through the shadows. The night was calm, and the stars shone brightly above. He paused for a moment to look at the town in the distance. He knew people were watching, but he did not care. He believed in what he was doing, and he believed that the results would speak for themselves. In his mind, the risk was worth it, and he would not stop until his work was complete. The next morning, the town awoke to a quiet tension. People whispered as they went about their day. Children were curious and asked their parents questions about Caleb's activities. Some parents tried to explain that he was just working on his land, but others were worried. The whispers grew louder, and small groups gathered outside the school and the general store, discussing what might happen next. Emma, feeling the weight of responsibility, spoke to the children she taught with care. "I know some of you have questions," she said gently. "It's okay to be curious, but we must remember to be careful. Some things are not safe to touch or play with. Always ask for help if you're unsure." The children listened attentively, sensing the seriousness in her voice. As the day went on, Caleb continued his work, seemingly unaware of the growing concern. Emma watched from a distance, her heart heavy. She knew the town's patience would not last forever. Something had to happen soon. Either Caleb would stop, or the town would have to take stronger action. The tension in Willow Creek was growing like a storm on the horizon. Everyone could feel it, though no one knew exactly when it would strike. Emma and Caleb were on different sides of the same problem. She wanted to protect the town, and he wanted to follow his plan. Both were acting from what they believed was right, but their paths were destined to collide. As the sun set that evening, the town held its breath, waiting for the next move. Emma prepared herself for the coming days, determined to do everything she could to keep people safe. And Caleb, steadfast and focused, continued his work, unaware of how close the town was to losing patience. The quiet life of Willow Creek was changing slowly but surely, and the coming days would test the courage, patience, and determination of everyone involved. The morning air was crisp, and the sun was just beginning to rise over Willow Creek. The town seemed peaceful, but beneath the calm surface, tension had reached a boiling point. Caleb worked on his ranch as usual, moving with precision and determination. But today felt different. There was a quiet energy in the air, as if something important was about to happen. Emma sensed it too, standing at the edge of town and watching him from a distance. She knew that the days of warning alone were coming to an end. As the morning progressed, Caleb carried on with his work. His movements were deliberate, measured, and careful, but they were also bold. He was building, digging, and arranging things in ways that no one in Willow Creek had seen before. Emma noticed that he was working closer to the town's edge, where children sometimes played and where livestock often wandered. Her heart pounded with worry. She had tried to reason with him, had asked him to stop, and yet he continued without hesitation. By mid-morning, a few townspeople had gathered near the edge of Caleb's property, curious to see what he was doing. They whispered among themselves, trying to guess the purpose of his actions. "It looks dangerous," one woman said nervously. "What if something falls? What if he hurts himself?" "Caleb," she called out, her voice strong but worried. He paused, lifting his hat slightly and looking at her. "Miss Riley," he said calmly, "good morning. How are you today? I'm asking you one more time. Please stop before it's too late. I know it looks strange, but I have my reasons and I must finish this. I hope one day you will understand." If something went wrong, the consequences could be serious. As the afternoon approached, Caleb worked tirelessly. He moved heavy objects, dug into the earth, and carefully assembled structures that no one could identify. Emma stayed nearby, keeping a careful distance but watching closely. She noticed that a few children had wandered too close to the edge of his property. Her heart leapt with fear. She ran toward them, waving her arms. "Children, come back, stay away from there," she shouted. The children obeyed, running back to the safety of the town under her watchful eye. Caleb paused, looking at the scene quietly. He did not scold the children, nor did he show anger. He simply nodded toward Emma, a silent acknowledgement that he understood her concern, yet he did not stop his work. Later that afternoon, the first serious incident occurred. A structure Caleb had been building, tall, wooden, and fragile-looking, began to wobble. Emma gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. She ran toward Caleb, shouting, "Caleb, the structure. It's going to fall." People rushed toward the edge of Caleb's property, their eyes wide with fear and confusion. "What is he doing?" one man exclaimed, shielding his face from flying debris. "That looks dangerous. He could have hurt someone. Caleb is trying to manage it, but we can't interfere too much or someone could get hurt. Please trust me. Small accidents, like loose boards falling or dust clouds rising, created fear among the onlookers. Caleb handled each situation carefully, preventing anyone from getting hurt, but the repeated incidents tested everyone's patience. Emma could feel the growing anger among the crowd, and she knew that it would only be a matter of time before someone demanded stronger action. By late afternoon, the mayor of Willow Creek arrived at the scene. Mayor Thompson, a kind but firm woman, stood at the edge of Caleb's property and called out, "Caleb, we need to talk. This has gone too far. The town is concerned for your safety and for everyone else's. You must stop immediately until we can understand what is happening." "Mayor, I understand your concern. I am careful and I know what I am doing. Please trust me. I will not let anyone get hurt. Please step aside and let us talk." Relief that Caleb was finally willing to talk, but worry that the town's anger might make the situation worse. She knew that the coming conversation would determine whether the town could trust Caleb or whether the conflict would grow even larger. The townspeople gathered around, curious and anxious. Children were kept at a safe distance, and families watched nervously. Caleb took a deep breath and began to explain his actions. He spoke of his reasons carefully, describing the purpose behind each structure, each action, and each decision he had made. His voice was calm, steady, and sincere. He wanted them to understand that his work, though unusual, was not reckless. He wanted to show that his intentions were good, even if his methods were misunderstood. As Caleb spoke, Emma listened closely. She could see the passion in his eyes, the care in his movements, and the honesty in his words. She realized that, though his actions had caused fear and confusion, Caleb's intentions were not harmful. He believed in what he was doing, and he was willing to take responsibility for any mistakes. The crowd began to soften. People whispered among themselves, realizing that Caleb was not acting out of stubbornness alone, but out of a deeper sense of purpose. Still, concern remained. They wanted assurance that no one would be hurt, and that the town would not face danger because of Caleb's work. By evening, the incident had become the turning point everyone had been anticipating. The town had seen the risks, the fear, and the determination of one man who refused to stop. The tension had reached its peak, and the way forward would require trust, understanding, and cooperation. Caleb had faced the town, the warnings, and the chaos he had caused, and now it was time for everyone to decide how to move forward together. Emma, standing near the edge of the property, felt a mix of relief and apprehension. She knew that the real challenges were only beginning. The town had seen the danger, the fear, and the determination, but now they had to choose whether to support Caleb, guide him, or intervene in a way that protected everyone. The coming days would test not only Caleb's courage, but also the town's ability to trust, forgive, and work together. And in that moment, as the sun set behind the hills, the people of Willow Creek understood that life would never be the same. They had faced the turning point, and what happened next would shape their town, their relationships, and their understanding of courage, responsibility, and community. The morning after the big incident, Willow Creek was quiet, but the atmosphere was tense. People moved through the town with wary eyes, whispering to one another as if the air itself carried the memory of the chaos from the day before. Even the birds seemed quieter, their songs muffled by the uneasy energy in the town. Families worried about what might happen next, and children were warned to stay close to home. Everyone knew that Caleb's work on the ranch had changed things. Nothing would be the same again. Emma woke early, her mind restless. She thought about the events of the previous day, about Caleb's determination, and about the town's reaction. Her heart was heavy with worry, but she also felt a sense of relief. Caleb had explained his reasons for the unusual activity on his land, and she had seen his honesty and care. Yet she knew that understanding his intentions would not make everything easy. The town had witnessed danger and uncertainty, and trust was fragile. She walked through the quiet streets, greeting neighbors cautiously. Many nodded at her with quiet smiles, but there were worried looks in their eyes. People had questions, and some had lingering anger. Emma knew that the next steps would be difficult. She needed to help the town understand Caleb's intentions while ensuring that everyone remained safe. It was a delicate balance, and she felt the weight of responsibility pressing on her shoulders. At the ranch, Caleb worked silently. The sun cast long shadows across the land, highlighting the structures he had built and the areas he had prepared. He moved with precision, checking everything carefully. The previous day had tested him, but he had managed to prevent serious harm. Still, he knew that the town's trust was fragile, and he worried about the consequences if something else went wrong. Mayor Thompson decided to hold a meeting with the townspeople. The meeting was scheduled for the small town hall, and everyone was invited. People filled the wooden benches, whispering anxiously among themselves. Some were still angry, while others were curious to hear Caleb's side of the story directly. Emma sat near the front, her hands folded in her lap, trying to calm her racing thoughts. She knew that this meeting could decide the future of the town and Caleb's work on the ranch. When Caleb arrived at the town hall, the room went quiet. People looked at him with a mixture of curiosity, fear, and respect. He nodded politely to the mayor and then to Emma, who gave him a small, encouraging smile. Taking a deep breath, Caleb began to speak. His voice was calm, steady, and sincere, carrying across the room. "I understand that my actions have caused concern," he said. "I never intended to frighten anyone or to create danger. What I am doing is important to me, and in ways you may not yet see, it could benefit the town. I ask for your patience and understanding while I explain." Caleb explained his work piece by piece, describing the purpose behind each structure and every decision he had made. He spoke of careful planning, of safety measures, and of the importance of his project. His words were clear, and he spoke with honesty. Emma watched the room closely. She could see the townspeople softening, their fear and anger gradually replaced by curiosity and understanding. People asked questions, and Caleb answered each one patiently. He did not hide anything, and he did not become defensive. His sincerity began to build trust, slowly but surely. After the meeting, the townspeople returned to their homes, still talking quietly about what they had heard. Some were still skeptical, but most had begun to see that Caleb's intentions were not harmful. Emma walked with a few neighbors, discussing the day's events. "It's clear now," she said. "He is careful and he is sincere, but we must continue to watch and make sure everything remains safe." Some townspeople offered help, bringing tools or advice, while others watched from a distance, ready to step in if needed. Emma stayed close, observing and supporting Caleb while keeping the town informed. The balance was delicate, but it was a step toward understanding and trust. One afternoon, as Caleb adjusted a wooden structure on the hill, a small crowd gathered at a safe distance. Children were warned to stay back, and parents kept a watchful eye. Caleb noticed them and smiled gently. "Don't worry," he said. "I am being careful. Nothing will happen if we follow the rules and respect the space." The crowd nodded, reassured by his words and calm demeanor. Emma felt a wave of relief. For the first time since the incidents began, she saw the town beginning to heal. People were starting to trust Caleb, even if only cautiously. She knew there would still be challenges ahead, but the tension that had gripped Willow Creek was easing. As the week passed, Caleb's work began to show results. The structures he had built and the careful planning he had undertaken were creating something meaningful on his ranch. It was clear that his intentions were good, and that his careful, deliberate actions had prevented accidents. The town began to see the value in his work, even if they had not fully understood it before. Emma visited Caleb one evening as the sun set behind the hills. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, and the air was calm and cool. "Caleb," she said softly, "the town is starting to see your care and your intentions. They are beginning to trust you again." Sometimes it takes fear and confusion to understand someone's intentions. You have shown courage, and the town has learned something too. We are stronger because of it. Caleb's work on the ranch had created challenges, but it had also taught valuable lessons about trust, determination, and understanding. Emma continued to watch over the town, guiding children, supporting families, and keeping a careful eye on Caleb's work. She knew that challenges would arise again, but she also knew that the town had grown stronger. People had learned to balance concern with trust, caution with understanding. The community had learned the importance of listening, observing, and working together. Caleb, for his part, continued his work with careful attention. He knew that the town's trust was fragile and that he must honor it. Every action he took was deliberate, every decision made with care. He had learned the importance of patience and communication, and he was determined to continue his work without causing fear or harm. The incident had changed Willow Creek in many ways. It had tested courage, responsibility, and understanding. It had challenged traditions, forced reflection, and created opportunities for growth. The town had been reminded that even in a small, peaceful place, change could bring fear. But with patience, honesty, and cooperation, challenges could be met and overcome. As the sun set on another day, Emma stood on the edge of the town looking toward Caleb's ranch. The sky was a deep orange, fading into purple as night approached. She felt a sense of hope and quiet pride. The town had faced its fears, learned to trust, and begun to grow stronger. Caleb had faced his own challenges and learned the value of patience and communication. And through it all, they had learned that courage, honesty, and care could guide them through even the most uncertain times. Willow Creek had been tested, and while the path had been difficult, it had brought the town and Caleb closer together. They had discovered the power of understanding, the importance of trust, and the strength that came from facing challenges together. The events had left a mark, but it was a mark of growth, resilience, and hope. And so, life in Willow Creek continued. The town remained cautious, aware of the lessons learned, but it also carried a renewed sense of community. Caleb continued his work on the ranch, careful, deliberate, and respected by those around him. Emma continued her role as protector, teacher, and guide, ensuring that the town remained safe and strong. And the town, once filled with fear and uncertainty, had learned that even in the face of danger and stubbornness, courage, patience, and understanding could lead to growth, trust, and hope. The sun rose slowly over Willow Creek, painting the town in gentle shades of gold and orange. Life had returned to a quieter rhythm, but the memory of the recent events still lingered in the minds of the townspeople. Everyone had felt the tension, the fear, and the uncertainty of what had happened on Caleb's ranch. Yet now, there was also a sense of relief, understanding, and even hope. People had learned lessons about trust, courage, and the importance of seeing beyond appearances. Emma Riley walked through the town early that morning, greeting neighbors with a soft smile. She could see that the town had begun to heal. People were cautious but attentive, aware that change could come suddenly, yet also confident that they could face challenges together. Children ran along the streets, laughing and playing, their voices carrying across the town. Emma felt a warm sense of pride. The town had faced a difficult period, and now they were stronger and more connected because of it. At the edge of town, Caleb Thompson worked on his ranch as usual. The structures he had been building were complete, and everything was in place according to his plan. The once strange and mysterious activity on his land was now recognized as purposeful, carefully done, and safe. Caleb moved with the quiet confidence of a man who had proven himself, not through stubbornness alone, but through patience, skill, and responsibility. For Caleb, the past weeks had been a lesson in more ways than one. He had learned that his intentions, no matter how sincere, could be misunderstood. The town had faced fear, and he had faced judgment, but through careful actions and honesty, he had earned a measure of trust. He knew that trust could be fragile, easily broken, yet he felt a quiet satisfaction that he had taken responsibility and acted with care. The townspeople began visiting Caleb's ranch more openly. Some came with questions, curious to learn more about his methods and the purpose of his work. Others brought small gifts, homemade pies or fresh vegetables, as a way of showing support and appreciation. Caleb received them all politely, his manner calm and welcoming. Even the children who had once been warned to stay away were now invited to observe from a safe distance, learning about hard work, patience, and careful planning. Emma watched this transformation with satisfaction. She had worried for the town, for the children, and for Caleb himself, but now she saw the results of honesty, courage, and cooperation. She approached Caleb one afternoon, carrying a basket of fresh bread she had baked. "Caleb," she said softly, "I think the town is beginning to see what you've always tried to show them. Your care, your skill, and your dedication, they've earned a place in the hearts of the people here. You reminded me that intentions alone are not enough. Actions, patience, and understanding are just as important. I hope the town sees that too." They learned to balance caution with trust, fear with understanding. Emma encouraged the children to ask questions, to learn from Caleb's example, and to see the value in careful planning and responsibility. One afternoon, a group of children visited Caleb's ranch under Emma's supervision. They observed the structures he had built, asked questions about the methods he used, and watched as Caleb explained the steps he had taken to ensure safety and success. The children listened attentively, their eyes wide with curiosity and wonder. They learned about hard work, patience, and the importance of understanding before judging. Caleb's ranch became a place of learning, where experience and guidance taught valuable lessons to the next generation. The adults of Willow Creek also reflected on the events. They realized that fear and anger could grow quickly when something was misunderstood. They understood that trust and communication were vital, and that judging someone without knowing their intentions could lead to unnecessary tension. Conversations in the town became more thoughtful, more respectful, and more open to understanding different perspectives. Emma felt a deep sense of accomplishment. She had stood up for the town, for safety, and for understanding. She had faced her fears, spoken honestly, and guided people toward seeing the truth. Her courage and dedication had helped the town navigate a difficult period and come out stronger on the other side. She knew that challenges would come again, as they always do, but she also knew that Willow Creek had learned the power of patience, honesty, and trust. Caleb continued his work quietly, but now with a sense of community around him. People offered help when needed, shared ideas, and observed his methods respectfully. He no longer felt the tension that had once hung over the town like a shadow. Instead, there was a sense of cooperation and mutual respect. Caleb had shown the town that responsibility, skill, and careful planning could earn trust, even in the face of fear. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Emma and Caleb stood on the porch of the ranch, looking out over the fields. The sky was painted with deep oranges and purples, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of grass and flowers. Emma spoke softly, "Caleb, the town has learned so much from you. We've all learned to be patient, to observe, and to understand before we judge. Your work has changed Willow Creek in ways we never expected. I have learned that intentions must be matched with clear actions, and that communication and patience are just as important as determination. We have all grown stronger because of this experience." Children played safely near the ranch, watched by parents who had grown more confident in their trust of Caleb and the town's collective care. The once tense atmosphere had softened into a sense of calm, respect, and quiet pride. Emma continued her work as a teacher, guiding children not only in reading and writing, but in life lessons about responsibility, courage, and understanding. Caleb continued his ranch work, sharing his knowledge with anyone willing to learn, and showing that even strong independence could coexist with community and trust. The events of the past weeks remained a topic of conversation, but they were no longer sources of fear. Instead, they were remembered as a time of learning, reflection, and growth. The town of Willow Creek had faced uncertainty and challenge, and in doing so had discovered the strength of patience, honesty, and cooperation. One day, a group of townspeople gathered near the ranch for a small celebration. They brought food, gifts, and words of appreciation for Caleb and Emma. The mayor spoke to the crowd, highlighting the courage, patience, and understanding that had helped the town through a difficult period. People listened, nodding and smiling, recognizing the lessons learned and the importance of trust and cooperation. Caleb addressed the gathering quietly. "I am grateful for your patience and understanding," he said. "I hope that the lessons we have learned together will stay with us, guiding our actions and decisions in the future. This town is strong because of the care, courage, and wisdom of its people." Willow Creek had faced fear and uncertainty, but it had emerged stronger, wiser, and more united than before. As the sun dipped below the hills, casting a warm glow over the town, life returned to a steady rhythm. Caleb continued his work on the ranch, careful, skilled, and respected. Emma continued her teaching and guidance, nurturing the minds and hearts of the next generation. And the town, once tense and fearful, now carried the lessons learned in its everyday life, lessons of courage, trust, patience, and understanding. Willow Creek had been tested, and it had passed with strength and grace. The people had learned that even in the face of fear, misunderstanding, and stubbornness, honesty, care, and communication could guide them through. They had learned the importance of patience, of observing before judging, and of supporting one another. And as night fell, the town was peaceful once more. The stars shone brightly above, and a gentle breeze whispered through the streets. Caleb's ranch stood quietly on the edge of town, a symbol of careful determination, responsibility, and the power of understanding. Emma looked up at the sky, feeling hope and pride. Willow Creek had learned valuable lessons, and its people had grown stronger together. Life in Willow Creek continued, steady and calm, filled with the quiet joys of community, learning, and understanding. The events on Caleb's ranch had left a mark, but it was a mark of growth, courage, and the power of honesty. The town and its people had been tested, and they had emerged wiser, kinder, and more united than ever before. And so, the story of Willow Creek ended not with fear or anger, but with understanding, trust, and hope for the future. The lessons of patience, courage, and careful responsibility would guide the town for years to come, ensuring that even in the face of challenge, they could face life together with wisdom and heart.